So, what kind of dog do you have that sheds so much in your gym?
Oh my goodness. We have 3 dogs and two
I
of
don't
them
think I knew you had
shed.
3.
Yeah, it's just kind of happened. They
Why did
tend
you do
to.
that?
I mean, that's a good question, Pat. I still ask myself that. Like I was saying off camera, I'm like, they're a bunch of freeloaders. I don't know why I let them into my house, but here they are. But we've got 2 that shed primarily. We have one who's a border collie blue heeler mix, and that dog sheds more than I believe physically possible. It doesn't make sense to me how there's still anything left over with the amount of shedding that occurs. And then we have a Great Pyrenees who also seasonally blows his coat, and it's just ridiculous. So, seeing that we're in the middle of summer right now, he is just letting it go, and yeah, a lot of dog hair.
Does the third one shed?
She does, but in relation to the other 2, it's almost unnoticeable.
Right.
So
We've got that classic, just every American has a dog, the Labradoodle.
oh yeah, yeah.
Doesn't shed. Fantastic. For whatever it is, a shedding dog.
Well, rub it in.
Dude, it's one of my pet peeve isn't the reason the word. I don't think I could physically live with it. Like it gets to me at some level that I can't even be comfortable around it. I'm going to throw somebody under the bus. I feel like this is a great opportunity to do that.
Yeah, always good to throw your friends under the bus when given the opportunity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Charlie Doobie.
Oh, a fine human being.
Dude,
Wonderful man.
A great guy, dog lover himself, and he had a dog who was both a wonderful dog and a lunatic at the same time. And that dog would shed, and I don't know if since the day he bought that dog and he bought his car, if he ever cleaned the inside of his car. It was, I mean, if we had to go somewhere to hop in his car, I want to put on a biohazard suit on as I get in. It was at another level. So, but hey,
I'll admit, Pat, that's my truck. My truck is very, utilitarian. It is a working truck. It's what I use to cut and haul my wood in.
Can't do it.
And haul dogs, and it's a little mangy. I'll admit.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, all right. I'll go. It's a pickup. I'd sit in the back.
Yeah.
And then share with folks. We were chatting before the camera clicked on. People like to know the workouts that we're doing. You did quite a little burner. What was it?
Yeah, we did a quick little 3-rounder. It was just echo bikes and burpees. Not too many of each. 3 rounds, straight blast through. It was a really aggressive little piece, and it was a good time. But it was one of those workouts where I think we've all experienced them in the past, where you're feeling good, you finish in a time that you're happy about, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I'm starting to feel a little bit worse and worse and worse. And for 5 to 10 minutes afterwards, it gets progressively worse, even though you've totally finished and you're hopefully recovering. Oh man, I've had that feeling quite a bit with sled push workouts and things like that. But this one definitely stung in that same way.
What was the workout?
Oh, I told you, it was 3 rounds of echo bikes and
I think you told me before,
yeah.
Karen. Did you say it again right now? Oh, sorry, because my head was somewhere else. That's a nasty one. And Fran was always like that for me. I could just finish Fran, and don't get me wrong, it felt terrible, but it felt nowhere near as bad as the next 10 minutes. It all just started getting worse and worse and worse. And I did a 21:59 yesterday of just pull-ups and burpees, and it gave me that Fran cough too. Nasty, just a nasty deal. But okay, here we go.
Those are fun. They're fun workouts when there's absolutely no reason to stop or slow down. You got to put yourself in that position once in a while.
You do, and not to get on a tangent, right? But a lot of it is just shooter's choice.
Yep.
Because it's up to you. Do you decide to dance with the devil? That workout that you just said, that can be a moderate experience, or that can be you set yourself on fire. Same workout, it's just you as an athlete decided to approach it with a different level of intensity. That's another interesting side piece is workout creation. There's some that lend themselves better to being short and sharp, but it still comes down to the athlete being like, you know what, today, I know what the programmer had in mind, and okay, let's do this. Okay. Where was I going? Oh, I got to do what I always forget to do. Go to variednotrandom.com. check out all the cool cycles that we have to help you get your first pull-up handstand walk. There's barbell work, there's running, everything you need uploaded to your calendar. Awesome. And then if you own a gym, any sort of fitness facility that improves people's lives, you can take care of all the back-end stuff that you have to, such as gym management, billing, and tracking the fitness of your athletes with an all-in-one solution from btwb. Just go to btwb.com and you will be so happy. Okay, so we have a question. We have a question from the community today that was sent in via Instagram. And this is, let's see, here we go. I love the majority of the elements in the CrossFit methodology. There's multiple modalities, not focusing on specialization, you're embracing full movements, not accessorizing, etc. However, there is one principle which I feel is holding me back. The point of training for the unknown and hence having varied workouts. I understand from the name of your podcast, the sessions are supposed to be varied and not random. Just a thought experiment, if you were to entertain me, what if CrossFit were to have all of its principles except that of having varied workouts? In that case, we would have the same workouts spread across a few weeks to be repeated to infinity. What would such a program look like? Thanks for all the episodes. Big love from India.
I dig it. It's fun to kind of work in the hypothetical. Immediately, my mind goes to two different places. And the first is more, I don't know, kind of conceptual or philosophical when we start talking about known and unknowable. And, you know, being steeped in the CrossFit methodology and the ideas behind it, you know, I think sometimes some of these can be taken literally. And so, yes, I do think that there is a literal version of that statement where you are literally training to be able to tackle unknown and, you know, unforeseen circumstances and challenges. So yes, I do think that's an element of it. However, I think a more pragmatic way to look at that is that it's about training economy. And what we're really trying to do when we think about movement selection, when we think about rep schemes that we're exposed to, when we think about time frames that we train in, what we're trying to do is get the biggest bang for your buck as far as what can I do now that positively influences things that I don't do. And so what I mean by that is if we take that down to a simple example like the clean and jerk, I train the clean and jerk not because I want to get better at the clean and jerk, although that is part of it, sure. I train the clean and jerk because it has this massive carryover to so many other things that if I didn't do so many of these other things and I only did the clean and jerk, I would probably have a lot of those bases still covered. And so to me, when we talk about variance and we talk about training for the unknown and the unknowable, it's not that I'm expecting to have to include in my program, you know, this once in a lifetime combination of movements in the middle of the night where it could happen one time and I got to do it to make sure that I check that box. No, it's that I have enough general physical capacity built up through this economy of choices that maximize my utility outside of that specific program, that really makes sure that when those oddball scenarios show up, yeah, I might not have exposure to that direct thing, but I'm not going to be too far removed from it either, if that makes sense. So it's a very, again, I know it's kind of conceptual, and I know that that explanation was a little bit wordy, but in my mind, it comes down to that concept. How can I maximize my utility while minimizing the number of things that I have to do in my training?
Transference is a wonderful thing, you know.
Yes.
The minimum dose that gives the maximum effective outcome is a really, really wonderful thing. And selecting movements that give you that bang for your buck is great. You know, you said something which isn't the point of the show, but I feel like it might be easy to gloss over, but I don't think some people might not get it right off the bat, which is, what do you mean I don't do the clean and jerk to get better at the clean and jerk? Like actually getting better at the clean and jerk is really important to me. That's actually why I think I do the clean and jerk 7 sets of when it comes back up. I have to get better at it. And it's like, yes, like, you know, of course you're trying to improve that lift. Of course you are, you know, but you're doing it because of that wonderful transference. And when the day comes, if you continue training for the rest of your life, which we hope all of us will, the day will come where your clean and jerk plateaus for a long time and then declines because you're in your 50s or 60s or whatever, but you will still do that movement. Ideally, in a perfect world, joints feel good and you can do it because of that wonderful transference. So even though at that phase in your life, you are not getting better at the clean and jerk, it will continue to be something which is very valuable in your arsenal because of what it allows all these other capacities to be expressed. So I think that's an interesting point that you just kind of said. I don't want people to miss out on. I would say Amit is the gentleman's name, and I hope I'm saying it properly, who wrote in the question. I would say the short answer to your question is it possible? Yes, it's possible. Where do I want to go with this? It's possible, yes. And I actually am such a darn nerd. I've got so many just like miscellaneous. You might have even seen this. Google Sheets and Docs that I've created are at 80% done. One of them is like an infinite cycle, so to speak. Because I know there are people out there exactly like Ahmed who want this sort of a thing. And whether it's 8 weeks or 12 weeks or 6 months, like to fill this, let's just say it's 6 months, these various workouts, and then once that's done, you just start it back over again, and or maybe it's whatever, 8 weeks, and then you touch that again, and you touch this lift 6 months ago, and now you're trying to see how you did compared to what you did 6 months ago, which is a great block of time to have done all these different workouts and get some adaptation. So like, can you do it? Sure. You could actually do it, and depending upon the time frame that you wanted to have, this whatever block to infinity, there would be a sweet spot where if it was so short, you wouldn't be able to cover some of the necessary bases, loading, time domains, rep ranges, movement patterns, that it just wouldn't do it. And then there's probably going too long where things are getting too repetitive. So you probably could. Short answer is yes, it'd be possible. It's possible, but would that optimize your fitness? I tend to think that it wouldn't optimize it because that unknown and unknowable aspect, if you are exposing yourself to that through intelligent programming, there is benefit. If something's just going to catch you off guard, hit you a bit different, you're going to learn something about yourself physically, mentally, realize you had a deficiency that you didn't know popped up before because you hadn't seen this movement and this combination before, or this interference or lack thereof. That is a really beneficial thing. And the last thing I'll say before I pause and throw it back to you is, I think programming done properly or done well can have both. And so what I mean by that, I would say to Ahmed is,
yes,
you get just the right number of somewhat new workouts that you haven't seen before. You've seen the clean and jerk, you've seen the whatever, but it's created in some way with the rep scheme and the movements and the whatever, that it's a new workout to you, and those happen at frequency. And then you have things that you've done plenty of times and they are not varied, so to speak. They're not unique. They're a 5x5 back squat, a 6x400 meter repeat. These come up at intervals. You have seen those before. And you've got classic benchmarks, and all of those, from brand new creations to classic heavy days to named workouts, all intermingled intentionally, help to provide these that's why benchmarks are important. These repeatable benchmarks that help you gauge where you are, but then also for most people, these new workouts that help keep it fresh, help keep people engaged, keep their attention, because at the end of the day, as we've said before, few things are more important than being consistent. And so finding that sweet spot of, from like a purely strength and conditioning aspect of like what group of movements and exercises will make you fit, fast, and strong, and then what's the psychology of the athlete to keep you walking into the darn gym every day so that you do make progress and that's you don't get bored. That's all kind of the secret sauce. So yes, you could repeat something to infinity, but I don't think it's optimal.
Yeah, I largely agree. And to me, I think the word variance always has to be kind of unpacked when we talk about programs like this. So, again, if you were to take a CrossFit program and say, all right, it's going to repeat like you said, for 2 weeks, this is what it is, and you're just going to keep cycling through that 2 weeks over and over and over again, technically that would be less variable than most CrossFit programs out there, because we know that there's always going to be some novel element coming down the pipe. Mm-hmm. However, if you were to take that 2 weeks And within it, let's just say you had a strength day followed by a long distance day, followed by a classic kind of couplet sprint effort day, followed by a rest as just a kind of easy 3-day example. And you repeated that template over and over and over again. You present that to many people who are involved in strength and conditioning, and they're like, oh my God, this is so chaotic, because the 3 elements across those days are so varied from one another. You know, they would probably be more comfortable with something that's more linear, in the sense that, okay, I work on strength for a period of time, then I switch gears, this old school periodization, which, you know, thankfully lots of people are moving away from that when it comes to strength and conditioning. I don't think it has the utility that it was kind of sold as. That's another topic for another time.
Right, but we could dive into that one.
but in most applications, I don't think you get what you pay for in that one. However, you know, variance is one of those terms that, again, you know, to somebody who's steeped in CrossFit, that 3-day repeating is like so constricted as far as variance is concerned. You talk to somebody with a more traditional kind of bodybuilding background or something, and they're like, this is still so chaotic and all over the map. So that's kind of interesting too, that you know, that term is going to exist on somewhat of a spectrum. But anyway, I agree that I think if you have 2 weeks and you repeat a 2-week program that's kind of pre-scripted, I think that you could be a really, really fit individual. You could probably be, you know, roughly within the same ballpark as somebody who's got all the bells and whistles and opens up their programming a little bit more. I would be very comfortable saying that, particularly for, I'll say, the lay person who's not looking to be like a professional kind of fitness athlete. There's just somebody that wants to be generally prepared. I think you can go a long way with a program like that and not have to think twice about it. It's interesting that you brought up optimization, because I think that always comes with a follow-up, which is optimized for what?
Sure. Yeah,
and as soon as we start talking about optimization, I think the conversation often jumps to capacities that you gain or strength that is added to lift or something like that. And what's often forgotten about is optimizing for somebody to stick with the program long term.
Consistency.
Yes, and I'll say one of the killers for most people, not all people, but most people, is when they get involved in strength sports particularly, and they have been doing something that has a little bit more variability in the programming, is they're like, oh my God, it is just so tedious and boring. Or long distance sports, same thing. People get involved in those and like, man, I cannot believe how much like just long mileage I have to put in on a weekly basis. I'm going out of my mind here. And then sooner or later, there's a washout rate associated with that. So that's kind of something also that I think gets thrown out when we're talking about optimization, is there is an experiential element to that, where if somebody loses interest and they constantly have to motivate themselves just to get there, that is something that in the long term will impact your results in a negative way. So I think for a lot of people, you know, CrossFit is really good in that sense, because you are kind of experiencing some novelty. And I think for a lot of people, most people, I would say, that's something that is a little bit easier to come in and deal with, rather than knowing you just got the same grind over and over and over again.
And I don't know, Amit's familiarity with CrossFit, although he does say that he's a level 1 here, so he's certainly got some your baseline knowledge there as well. But you know, you touched on it, but it bears repeating that varied doesn't mean random, right? Varied doesn't mean nonsense. Varied means, you know, and you brought up like a classic linear progression or something like that, where it's just been my personal understanding that the wonders of variance, I feel like intelligently laid out and designed variance is about as close to magic as you can get with like creating an athlete, you know, and if you're going to just think about variance with squatting, now getting back to Amit's question, it depends upon, if we're going to just repeat this cycle, how short is this? Is it 2 weeks? Is it 3 weeks? Is it 4 weeks? Because if it is, like I said, if it's a bit constricted, you're limiting the amount of variance I have to develop you as an athlete, because you know, if we're squatting heavy this week, I might not have you squat heavy next week. It might be a dead, it might be an Olympic lift, it might be something else. It might take a few weeks or something to circle back to, let's say, the back squat. Then I circle back to the back squat because we hit these other heavy lifts on these other weeks, and on And the weeks that we didn't back squat heavy, we went below parallel in a different way because variance is beautiful. And we circle back to the back squat. Well, I don't want to repeat exactly what we did 3 or 4 weeks ago. Let's say it was a 7x1. I'm going to do a 5x5. And then a couple weeks later, it's triples. And then it's going to be a wave of 2-3-5-10, 2-3-5-10. So like you need some decent time laid out. And that same thing is happening for the deadlift, the power clean, the jerk. We're going to be mixing you through not just 5K runs, but 10Ks and 1 miles and 200-meter repeats and 800s and 400s and short dashes. And like that, you're not going to squeeze all that into 2 weeks. It's just not going to work, or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And so it gets to this, well, how long of a cycle do you need? Which is why, again, yes, you could do this, but if you're constraining somebody into even a couple month cycle, you'll get fit, fast, and strong if you're going below parallel and you're going overhead, you're going short, medium, and long, and there's variance of time domains. But by its very nature and how many different things you can expose an athlete to if you're not constrained, there's going to be something that just didn't make the cut. And that is why, I could use the word like, yes, it will work, but do I think it's optimal? I tend to think that it's not.
Yeah, I agree. Now, you see me glancing over here. I'm trying to squint.
I just thought I wasn't holding your attention.
No, I'm trying to cue myself up. I took the Pepsi challenge.
Okay.
I took Amit's challenge to heart, and I said, okay, I'm going to give myself 2 weeks, and I'm going to write a repeating program.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, and so I do have a template, and I'm straining now because it's a little further out there.
You're getting old with those eyes, man.
I'm telling you, man. Yeah, I just anyway. All that aside, here's how I would do it. So okay, let's assume we're in this 2-week world. We're going to write a program. It's going to move forward steadily into infinity. Now, a couple of assumptions within that. Number one, we'll do the same thing across these days that I'll lay out to you guys in a second. So that's one assumption. But the second assumption is that within those days, to your point that you just talked about, there is some room to progress, because I feel like any program that is repeated, that's inherent in what it is. Like whatever it is that you're doing has to have some, I don't know what you want to call it, vertical integration.
Sure, so there you go.
It can get beyond where it was. So, all right, that said, here's how I do it. We're doing a classic Pat Sherwood Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday work, Thursday off.
Okay.
Friday, Saturday work, Sunday off. It's a 2-week repeating cycle. Day 1, Monday, is always going to be a squat, 5x5, and an upper body pull weightlifting movement. So a bent over row. Okay. Tuesday, long run. We're talking a 5K run to a 10K run on Tuesday. Wednesday is a 3 to 5 minute effort, CrossFit style. And the reason I lay that out first is because as we progress over the weeks and months, the movements, which are going to be power clean and muscle up, can progress. So originally I've got it written as a 21-15-9 power clean, 12-9-6 muscle up. That's what we're doing every first week on Tuesday. Now, as you progress that
Wednesday.
3 to 5 effort, I'm sorry, yes, you're right, Wednesday. As we progress that 3 to 5 minute effort, you can push the reps up or down and the weights up or down on either of those movements to fit within that 3 to 5 minute time domain, depending on how much progress you're making.
Okay.
So that's the idea. Thursday's off. Friday is Olympic lifting day, focusing on the clean and jerk. Saturday, we come in and we do a 15 to 20 minute CrossFit effort. And again, the movements are going to be 400 to 800 meter run, thrusters, and pull-ups. So that's always what we're doing on Saturdays, a 15 to 20 minute effort of run, thrusters, and pull-ups.
Saturday's always a kick in the junk.
Everybody loves it, but hey, you know what? You got a day of rest coming up. Sunday, you're taking a breather. So that's week 1. Okay, so to recap, squat and pull on Monday, long run Tuesday, short and punchy 3 to 5 on Wednesday. Take a day off, clean and jerk Friday, run, thruster, pull up Saturday. Day off. Week 2, same template, lift on Monday. This time it's going to be deadlift and press. Okay. Tuesday, long run. Long effort. Same idea as the long run, but we're going to row instead of run. Wednesday, Same story, 3 to 5 minutes, but go even shorter. It's going to be a sprint effort. So this is going to be a bike calorie repeats. So 20 cal repeats, something like that, that just gives you a real short, sharp dose. So less than a minute of effort every time. Thursday off. Friday, Olympic lifting, just like previous Friday, but we're focusing on the snatch this week. Saturday, we've got an AMRAP. This is a 10-minute AMRAP, and it's going to be bike cals, pull-ups, and push-ups. Okay. Some variation of those. So again, within that, as you get better, the bike cals can go up or down. The rounds that you strive for can go up or down. You can experiment with strict or dips or some weighted version of a pull-up to progress that as it goes.
Okay, so the recap on week 2 is dead heavy on Monday.
Yep.
Tuesday was long but a row.
Correct.
Wednesday was
sprint
Wednesday?
Bike.
Sprint bike. Okay. Thursday off. Friday snatch.
Yep.
And then Saturday push-ups. And what were the other two?
Bike cals, push-up, pull-up.
Bike cals, push-up, pull-ups. Okay, gotcha.
And looking at it now, actually, looking at that, I think we could probably add one more below parallel. So maybe scratch the bike calories on that and make that a
I was going to ask you how many times you're going below parallel in the second one.
Yeah,
gotcha.
With latitude.
Hey, we just whipped it up quick for the show. I mean, we're not holding you to the craziness. Okay, gotcha. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
But again, basic weekly template. Monday heavy, Tuesday long, Wednesday CrossFit style effort, Thursday off. Friday Oli, Saturday moderate effort, Sunday off. Forever. Yep. So that's what I came up with.
And if you and now, without even talking about anything more than that, right? Like, let's talk about the vertical integration for a second. There's a buzzword. There's a buzzword for you. But without even getting into vertical integration, right? Let's say that it was just...
If that even makes sense.
I think I get what you're saying. Let's just say it was relatively fixed. Power clean's always 135. Whatever. If you just had the robotic discipline to do this week after week, and you ate relatively clean and get some good sleep, you might have some holes in your game. I don't know if you could walk on your hands. Beats me, but you're going to be a beast. Like, I don't think there's going to be something that crosses your path in regular life that what you just laid out, you're going to struggle for. I mean, because that's also people need to realize the difference between real life and a competition. Like a fitness competition is an artificial man-made creation that sometimes exceeds anything that you're going to find in regular life, like bringing you to the point of failure, like to test the best people in the world. If you're talking about regular life or being a police officer, military, first responder, you could create some template, like you said, repeat it ad nauseum, and be just fine. It's just, what do you want to do?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if you're CrossFit minded, you look at a template like that and immediately you're going to start picking out the things that you don't see in there and you're like, well, what about? I mean, I look at that template and already I'm revising it, right?
Sure.
With, hey, I need to swap out squats here. I'm already making a change. Looking at it again and speaking it out to you, I'm like, oh man, where are the rope climbs? You know what I mean? I'm like, where are the handstand push-ups? Yeah.
Right.
And so that, I think, is one of the most liberating aspects of not having to be confined in this way, is that you can look at something and be like, oh, I know how I could improve this immediately. Next week, we're going to do rope climbs instead of pull-ups.
Correct.
And you have the latitude to do that. It's a great thing. Or the other way, you can say, hey, we're not ready for rope climbs yet. You know what? This was written, but actually we're going to scrap it because we need more work on the basics. Let's go back to just working on, whatever it happens to be. So that kind of latitude, I think, is one of the best elements about embracing variance.
Talk to me about the VI.
The VI?
The vertical integration.
The vertical integration, yeah. Well, just that. So again, if we take this basic idea, let's just look at a week long of that template. Day one is heavy, and so you've always got latitude there to add weight and try to improve your maxes there.
100%.
Or to get a certain number of reps at a certain weight and try to exceed that rep max. There's lots of ways you can continually improve there. Tuesday, the long effort. So again, there's a couple different ways that you could see improvement week to week. And I suppose you could argue this is a little variance, but it's within that same kind of constraint. So maybe it's a set time. I'm going to run for 45 minutes and I'm going to see how far I can get. Okay, well, maybe the other time it's going to be a set distance that lands me roughly in that same time frame, and I see how fast I can achieve that.
Right.
Maybe it's a 10K or something. So there's ways that you can start to play with that. The third workout of the week is kind of a CrossFit workout. And again, we talked about that. Maybe increase the weight of one movement, increase the reps, but still try to hit that same time domain.
Yeah.
Or don't change the workout at all and try to do it faster. There's a couple different ways to kind of cook it, even within the confines of what you've got.
Or some crazy thing that somebody might not think of, right? If you had 135 in your head, you're like, okay, well, this week it's going to be 115, and you have to do the power cleans unbroken.
Perfect. Yep, exactly. Yeah, to challenge your ability to develop big sets under fatigue, something like that. Yeah,
Cool.
I love it.
Yep. Okay.
But
you could play that game ad nauseum every day.
For sure. Yep. And so I do think it is fun to put constraints on yourself, and I would encourage people, if they're interested in programming, it's fun. And I think that you get forced into a certain level of creativity if you know, you're like, man, I've got 10 workouts over 14 days and that's all I've got. How would I put this together to make sure that somebody's going to get the goods,
Yep.
There's a million different ways to skin that cat, but it's kind of fun to think about how would you approach it with that number of constraints. And then again, step away from it, come back and look at it and see what jumps out to you immediately. Oh man, this is how I'd refine this to make it even better. Okay, cool. Well, that's useful too, because guess what? That artificial constraint that you just used, it's just that. It's artificial. It doesn't matter. And so you could take that little nugget back to the program that you have outside of those constraints and see how it applies. So it is fun to play around with some of this stuff.
Sharpening the focus and removing, the cool thing about a drill like this is it really forces you to identify what's important, what's fluff, because if you've only got 2 weeks and 10 workouts, you don't want any fluff. You want
cut it away.
Everything to have like direct intent, purpose, tons of transferability. Like, this is so valuable. I can't imagine not having it in. It's a great drill just to make sure you haven't lost the bubble in some of those areas.
And hey, one thing I will say too, on a personal level, I go through these little jags. I was actually talking to my wife about this just the other day, because I've been on the road for the last couple of weeks, bouncing around a lot of travel. Came home, was happy to be back and not having a lot to do for the weekend. Promptly got sick, as one does.
Perfect.
And so anyway, as we've talked about many times in the past, I think you and I are similar in the sense that, like, it's not often that we're just going to wallow around and not do anything. So I was like, I got to do something. So I came in to the garage and I started doing just some basic air bike, nothing too heavy, nothing too crazy, not trying to kill myself with it, just to get the blood pumping. And then what I think is emerging as my favorite movement of all time, Pat, which is the strict straight bar dip. And I just went back and forth on what felt good for about 20 minutes. And I was like, you know what? I worked up a sweat. I didn't kill myself. And it was a great workout. And I came back the next day and I did something really similar with strict pull-ups. And I was like, man, if I just did that for the rest of the summer, like variations on air bike and dips or air bike and pull-ups, I bet you I would leave the summer feeling pretty fit. You know what I mean? Now, would it be optimal? Of course not. Would there be things that I would be confronted with in the fall, having not touched a barbell in a couple months? Of course, but I bet you I would come out the other end of that minimalist experiment in pretty decent shape.
You don't have to twist my arm. Strict pull-ups and strict dips. I mean, everybody could use more of them in their lives.
I agree.
They are wonderful. I think research has proven that they are basically a fountain of youth.
Absolutely.
They rejuvenate you, and they'll make everything you do a bit better. So embrace them.
Pretty sure your business ventures will also improve the more dips that you're able to do unbroken. I think it's also a fact.
And who's kidding who? The t-shirt's going to look great with those horseshoe triceps just busting out of it. Okay, now I'm on a different tangent. We just took a family vacation to Idaho last week. And so I was gone. I got in 3 workouts. They had a great, just local community center that I went in. And as more gyms do these days, they had lifting platforms and a quote unquote functional fitness area. It was fantastic. Got everything accomplished that I needed to. there was some dude that I was fixated on. Take that how you will. He had on a tank top, and he had the biceps, triceps, and shoulders that I think darn near any guy would be like, that's exactly what I want. He was knocking out strict dips on the dip bars, just like the whole time that I was over there, to the point that I went over and struck up a conversation with him, because he had like that gymnast build. You know, like gymnasts have like that small waist and their upper body just goes. And I was like, man, were you a gymnast? Like, he was a younger kid, like college. I'm like, you were a gymnast? He's like, no. He's like, it's funny. He goes, funny. People ask me that. I'm like, well, yeah, clearly. I mean, look at you. And he goes, but I love the way that gymnasts train. He goes, so I just do all those kind of movements that they do every day in the gym. I was like, well, it's working.
There you have it.
It's working, man. Yep. Strict dips for the win. He actually motivated me so much that I did some before I left.
See?
But yeah, any closing thoughts?
No, just get out there and do your dips. I think that they are the ultimate exercise, and get working on them. There's still summer left.
Let me take a random poll from the VNR community. Like, I wasn't joking about what I said. I've got so many things just 80% finished because I love this stuff. Do people want some sort of a fixed program to do to infinity? Like, it's whatever, I figure out is like a good optimal thing, whether it's 2 months, 12 weeks, whatever. And once you're done, you start it back over, and it's just over and over again. Is there a desire for that? If so, I'll finish that up. Maybe we'll finish it up and make it a VNR cycle or something like that. So yeah, drop a comment. Let me know.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll tell you what, I'll clean up the one that I roughed up on my whiteboard over there, and I'll send it over. And if there's interest, people can tap into that one too.
100%. Okay, well, appreciate it, everybody. As you know, this was a question from the community. Everyone out there helps drive the show. We appreciate you. Post your thoughts. Go to btwb, the YouTube channel, find this show, post your thoughts on this topic. Do you have an idea for another show? Let us know there. You can go to the Varied Not Random Instagram account. You can just leave a public comment there, or you can send a direct message to that Instagram account for an idea for the show, and we'll get it there as well. So for Adrian Bosman, I'm Pat Sherwood, and we'll see you next time.